think that means we're live.
I think so.
Yay. Okay. Also, if you want to show anything, I can make you a co-host and I can give you share screen powers.
Just in case, but I don't have any plans to.
Okay.
There's like one image I might bring up, but I'll have to dig.
Or you can send it to me and I will.
That sounds good.
Let's see. I'm still learning, you know?
Oh, for sure.
One person's watching, that's me. The more. Okay.
Here we go.
New profile. Oh, that was Outlook.
I'm trying to save the image that I would potentially share.
That's okay.
But I'm not really sure how to do that. So
my coworker Becky's here too.
Hello.
Hey, Becky.
All right, there's that. If we get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so should I just start talking?
Oh, one of my students is here, Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Haley.
Good morning.
Yeah, so
before you get like started, we can like chat about like how you're doing. How was your, holiday season this weekend?
My holiday season this weekend was pretty non-existent.
Okay.
And that's okay. We don't really do a ton of stuff for the Easter holiday. What I was most excited about, honestly, was that it was Bunny Day in Animal Crossing.
Ooh.
So we celebrated that way. And I don't know, I think I had like a can of soup for dinner or something like that. So pretty low key. But I've been good generally. It's a really weird time for everybody. We will probably be joined by my cat colleagues at some point.
Oh yeah, you got to show off the cats.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of life now. So it's all right. Adapting, to the extent that we can, going from there. I wish I could say I was reading more or crafting more, but I'm doing neither because I'm playing a lot of Animal Crossing. So
honestly, I have not. I've been wanting to read, and it's been really hard for me to focus on reading, and sort of like because I already have to read for school.
Yeah. Trying to get in some of that, the reading for pleasure before I hopefully go back in the fall. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah,
so need to work on a personal statement. I should really write that down on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting and then remembering when I can't work on it. So it's funny. So for those of you that are logging on to YouTube, and because we didn't really do introductions yet, I'm Abbie. I've worked with Christina before, but I'm here to talk a little bit about community engagement and my role at the University of Rochester's Center for Community Leadership, which is a long name. It's an office that currently combines community engaged learning, civic engagement, like politics and voting, and leadership development. But like I said, lately I've been doing a lot of Animal Crossing. So a little bit about me. I am working on a personal statement to hopefully attend University of Buffalo's Master's in Library and Information Science program because, like Christina, love books, love reading, really enjoy like the written word. But more than that, I think libraries exemplify this kind of like our last public institution. And they're a really good resources and for community building. So I like this idea of libraries as being like this third place, not home, not school or work, but a third location that you could like meet people or learn new things and not have to pay for a cup of coffee to do it. And that's my goal with pursuing the MLIS is to develop more of like a community building aspect to community libraries. libraries. So
And
that's my long library. But.
no, that's okay. An MLIS is a Master's in Library and Information Science for folks who may have not heard of that title before. We're not going to talk about library science per se, but I think it's important to see that even when you are established within your career, that you can see that there's a passion that can still, pursue you into another realm. Because Abbie, you already have your master's degree, which I did want to address a few of the comments. People are saying hi to you. They said they don't know you. They'd love to see your animals, etc.
If they come around, I will show them off, but
okay.
They run away if I try to scoop them. So.
That's okay. But can you tell us about first, where are you from?
Yep.
Where you went to school?
Yep.
And I mean, I know all these things.
I'll just talk about the whole trajectory.
And how we met.
Yeah, because I think that'll be useful. So again, I'm Abbie. I am a native Rochesterian. I grew up in the North Winton village of Rochester, which is like northwest or northeast Rochester. I can't really think of a landmark around there. From the corner store that I used to go to, which will help nobody. But when I was in 6th grade, so starting middle school, I moved to Webster, and that's where I currently live. My family still lives, where I graduated high school. But I went to college at the University of Rochester, got a degree in English, language, media, and communications. I really believe that no matter what you hear about an English degree, that it can be useful in no matter what fields or discipline you want to get into. Everyone needs to communicate. So whether that's you're working for a tech firm, they still need to write press releases and even just emails, right? And being able to effectively express ideas and arguments, I think is really important. Grant writing, all of that stuff, a lot of practical uses. And I also minored in international relations and psychology. The University of Rochester has a unique set of academics, or a unique curriculum, in that we don't have, what do they call, prerequisites, general.
You don't have general education classes, which we talk about all the time. When you say you got to get your introductory English, you have to do that, your introductory math, your psych, your soc. And most colleges that are public all have general education classes, and a lot of do. But you can tell about U of R's model.
Yeah, I figured this might be new to some of you. I think it's just Rochester, University of Rochester, and Brown, I think, have models like this. But we have what we call the Rochester curriculum. So there are 3 general fields or disciplines, let's say. The natural sciences, which is generally your math, bio, chemistry, that kind of stuff. Social sciences, which would be your psychology, sociology, anthropology, and your humanities, which would include language courses, English, film, that kind of thing. And so what Rochester requires is that you major in one of those 3 disciplines. So I majored in English, so a humanities. And then you complete at least what is called a cluster, or a series of 3 courses in the other 2. You can also minor or double major in one of those other disciplines, and that counts. But they want you to get at least a little pocket of knowledge in those other areas. So for me, like I said, I majored in English, which is a humanities. I minored in both international relations and psychology, which was a social science. And then I did a cluster, or 3 courses, in astronomy for non-science majors, so really intro level. But I loved those courses. So that's kind of why I was able to double minor. I took a lot of religion courses and was pretty close to triple minoring there. And it's because I had that kind of flexibility. That's what sold me to going to the U of R and the library itself, honestly. Which is gorgeous, but that's different than a lot of the other programs you might be visiting or looking at. So wanted to talk about that a little bit as something to consider.
I appreciate that because I think that it's nice to see a different model when it comes to higher education and the fact that it gets to be so personalized at the University of Rochester. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So after that, I completed a year of service with Rochester Youth Year. I served with Cornell Cooperative Extension on an urban 4-H after school program called Citizen U, also along elevator speech. And when I was a Rochester Youth Year member, I was also serving as an AmeriCorps Vista. So Christina, I don't know if you've talked about your experience serving as an AmeriCorps member in the past or how much I should delve into that. But that was a really, as I'll make clear soon, pretty life-changing experience for me. As a Rochester native, I thought it was really important to give back to my community. It was an opportunity to learn a lot about both the challenges that the city sees and the really unique assets that we have, and try to like bring them together. From there, I continued my work at Cornell Cooperative Extension for a little while, and then was hired on at the U of R, again in their Center for Community Leadership, to oversee programs like the Rochester Youth Year program. So in my role right now, I advise or oversee our national service programs, including Rochester Youth Year and a summer version we call Urban Fellows, which all of you would be able to apply for once you get into college, if you'd like, as someone that's native to the Rochester region. I also oversee political engagement currently, which is primarily advising a student-led group to promote voting, political identity, general political awareness across the globe.
You gotta vote.
You gotta vote.
You just have to vote. We have the ability, and you gotta exercise it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I wanted to give a brief overview. Many of my students do know about my background with Rochester Youth Year and AmeriCorps Vista. And when you bring up the term like national service, usually you think about the military, which is one great avenue to serve your country. But another way that you can serve your country through national service is through different AmeriCorps programs or other types of service programs. So rather than me, joining the military, which wasn't for me, and rather than going abroad to do like Peace Corps or something like that, I decided to stay at home and serve my community through this program. And I did similar things like Abbie did, but at a different. So when I talk about like the Gandhi Institute where I used to work, then that's like one of the sites that I served in the Rochester community. But it was a very profound, important experience in my life. So I feel very good about it. And it's like, I know it's influenced me to do this job. So you wouldn't have me if I didn't do AmeriCorps Vista, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I got to work with Christina when she was serving at the Gandhi Institute, and then her year following when she worked in my office. And so it's been like so great to work with you as a colleague and to continue working with you now as a peer, Yeah. So I don't know if there are any other questions or if it would be worth me kind of talking about different kinds of service or engagement through maybe the lens of AmeriCorps, kind of using that to differentiate.
Maybe. I was going to ask you, so okay, so when I was at Geneseo, which is my undergrad, my daughter, I didn't realize that there was like a community engagement department. Like, I didn't know I could volunteer, and I did volunteer in the community, but I didn't know that there was a department for that. Oh, if you have questions, Abbie, you can also ask them and have them respond in the YouTube.
Oh, cool. That's helpful.
But like, what are some of the names of, community engagement departments or volunteer departments that you normally see at colleges? Because like you're connected to, area, different colleges, and they all have departments that work similarly like yours.
Yeah. And we've been doing a lot of benchmarking. Our office is turning 15 years old this
Woo.
upcoming fall. And so we're talking about doing a name change. Very exciting. This is what you have to look forward to as a professional. It's like your office's name is changing. You get to coordinate a birthday party. Spoilers. But that's a great question. I also didn't really know that my office existed when I was a student at the U of R. So I think that that's a pretty common thing. Like I said, ours is called the Center for Community Leadership. Most of them, though, I think are called, you know, the Center for Civic Engagement, Center for Service Learning, Community Engaged Learning. I know Nazareth is called the Center for Life's Work, and that includes, both their Career Services Department, their Community Engagement Office, and possibly Study Abroad. So that's,
I think so. We visited Nazareth in February. Sorry, I meant to interrupt. I was just saying we visited Nazareth in February, and we had a presentation about the Center for Life's Work as part of the many presentations we had, which were excellent. So when I asked the question about like, hey, how can you get paid to like help the community? And they talked about their tutoring. That was like one of the ways, which actually RCCL, your department, has like a program like that too.
Yeah, we do. That program is called LEAP, Learning and Exploring at Play. Everything we have is an acronym. So ROI is Rochester Youth Year. But LEAP engages undergraduate students to work one-on-one or in small groups with Rochester City School District or RCSD students that are K through 4, I think now. And they do a lot of STEM programming, literacy, math, just again, learning and exploring through play. So that's what they do on the weekend. Generally, if you participate in a day of service, at the U of R, we have Wilson Day, which is for all incoming students. Is yours called like Geneseo Knights Day or something like that?
It's, yeah, they made everything into a night pun because that's their mascot.
Yeah.
I participated. It was fine.
Yeah. So Geneseo has them. Most colleges, I think, have a pretty big day of service. They're not all required or like strongly recommended, but most schools will have them. So those are usually through the school's Office for Community Engagement or Service. Programs like LEAP that I mentioned that we have, I think they call it Partners in Reading at Nazareth. Those are similar. Not all schools have kind of like the AmeriCorps National Service programs. I think that's part of what makes us unique. But a lot of other colleges, those offices might include like internships or something similar. And I think one of the best takeaways from doing service in college is that your coursework tends to be really theoretical. So you're talking about like systems or theories, like why things are the way they are. And then through service or internships or what have you, volunteering, you can really put that theory into practice. So I was really able to leverage my English degree, for example, writing grants and lesson plans and MOUs, which are Memorandum of Understanding. It's basically an agreement between one organization and another. So I developed some of those during my year of service. I was able to actually put all of that in practice instead of just like reading literature and writing an essay on those books. You're able to engage with people and learn how to communicate and work with different personality styles. So really putting some of that like psychology piece into practice. I think the best form of service is really more what I would call community engagement. And it's, I think unless you're talking to like a community engagement professional, it tends to be like pretty synonymous or interchangeable. When I look at service, I think about things like days of service, you go and like volunteer with an organization or with a project once. And it's great, you know, you're able to accomplish a need or a goal that the project has. So whether that's like, you know, planting a garden or weeding a playground or something. All of that's, I think, really important. Schools, for example, you know, should feel like welcoming places to go and not like, you know, jails or something. So I do think that like a beautification has its purpose. But when I think about community engagement, which is the model that we really try to uphold, it's much more long-term, sustainable, and mutually beneficial. So you're gaining something out of it. You know, you're able to practice some of those skills, to practice press release writing, for example, to practice grant writing. But then the organization also benefits from increased outreach and engagement with the community. They have this grant that's now written that they can apply for and hopefully receive. So these are like much longer term benefits and supports than planting a garden out front. And I think that when we look at service and look at engagement, it really is on a long spectrum. So days of service are certainly important, like don't get me wrong. But our office's goal is to kind of get folks in there and then push them or walk hand in hand with them as they start to develop these long-term partnerships with community organizations.
Right. It's more than just doing like a one-off experience, which, like you said, is very valuable. But at the same time, like I do find you get more value from like your experience, and so does the organization when you become like a long-term volunteer. And you don't even have to do it through a formal program like AmeriCorps, but you can. But when I talk, like I tell you guys all the time to volunteer, and there's a reason why I do that. But specifically when I say like pick an organization that you're passionate about, it's because it helps you grow as a professional, and it ultimately helps them more than if you were to just go, you know, twice a year to go help them out. But if you go, you know, like once a month or once a week, if you can, do what they need, then you're ultimately helping them longer and like in the long run. Also, I do have a question for you, Abbie.
Yeah. Great.
It seems unrelated, but that's because she lost power and then she came back.
Okay.
She wanted to know if the major you picked for undergrad was this your original decision in high school?
That's a great question. Short answer, no. The long answer is that I had no idea what I wanted to do in college throughout high school. I very much remember the whole like, what are you going to major in? And feeling like you needed to have an answer for that and not feeling comfortable just saying like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out. So I think I generally told people that I wanted to major in psychology, but knew around the time that I was entering college that I didn't necessarily want to be like a therapist or a practitioner. I did end up minoring in it for what it's worth. So like sort of maybe. I think I decided to do an English degree my sophomore year. And I think it was because of a lot of venting to family about like not really knowing what I was going to do with my life. And I think it was my uncle actually who said, you know, you're interested in psychology, you're interested in like international relations, you know, I was already taking some literature courses, you're interested in that. Like, it really sounds like what you're interested in is like how people communicate with each other. And I was like, ding.
Yeah.
And decided to pursue English and specifically the language, media, and communications track. We also had like a literature track and a theater track, and I think maybe a creative writing. Now we have, I think, academic writing or something too. But I opted for language, media, and communications because I knew I wanted to, again, be a bit more like practical in my experience rather than more of that theoretical, like let's talk about literature and literary devices, as much as I love that. So yes and no. I neglected to mention earlier that I got my first master's in human development from the Warner School of Education. That I did decide to move forward in because of experiences I had in college. So I interned with the city of Rochester and helped design a youth program that we actually partnered with when I was a Rochester Youth member. A lot of like intricacies. And through that experience and my Rochester Youth Year experience, I found that I really feel passionately about positive youth development and community asset building. And so my human development work is focused on designing quality programs for youth, notably like adolescents or teens like yourselves. Yeah, kind of bridging that with general community building. So that was a long answer.
Oh no, it's okay. That positive youth development that you're talking about, just to like explain how they experience it. It's something that like I don't know, I try to emphasize with my students. I mean, I know that we all have like gaps and weaknesses, but it's rather than focusing on those areas, it's more about building your strengths and the things that you're really good at and being able to like make them bloom. So when I tell you guys like, oh, you're really good at this, and we talk about like how you can, you know, exercise those skills, that's a form of positive youth development. So you're already experiencing it.
Exactly. Yeah, you definitely practice it more than I do on a day-to-day basis. My cat Rada is coming.
Yeah.
This is Rada, Radha. She doesn't want to be held. She's beautiful and my best friend, and my grandma actually named her. So fun facts about her. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of different ways to take that like asset building approach to community engagement. And one of them that I was going to mention earlier, and this is a great segue, is that while it's really important to be open to the needs of the community partner that you're serving, the organization you're serving, I think that a lot can be said for really showcasing your own strengths as well. So, I mean, honestly, one thing that like almost everybody in your generation is good at is social media and kind of knowing how to leverage follower counts and like make posts that are engaging and that people are actually going to want to read. You're far more like on top of current trends than like I am, or sorry, Christina, probably than you are.
I used to be, but not
right?
anymore.
Used to be. And so leveraging that, I think, can be really beneficial to organizations, offering to run their social media accounts or come up with like a social media plan for them, redoing their website in a way that's a little bit more user-friendly. All of those skills, which are just like a kind of a generalizable one, are really great projects that you can suggest to them too, that they might not be thinking about. So if you have any other strengths like creative writing, like design, all of those I think are great to bring up, as well as, be open to.
Yeah. Or photography. Like there were so many times when I was like at the Gandhi Institute where we would have big events and we would ask, we couldn't pay a photographer. And it wasn't because we were cheap. It's just because we're a nonprofit. We don't make to, make a profit. We make money to pay the colleagues and to pay for the services. So like we had oftentimes college students who had an interest in photography, and maybe they borrowed a camera from the college, and then they would come and they would take photos for our events, which helped us out in a few ways because we got really nice photos, but then it helped the students because they built their portfolio for photography if they ever wanted to do it as like a side business, or if it was their actual passion, then they built their professional portfolio.
Absolutely. And high quality photos like that are so important for organizations to effectively tell their story, which is a good way to get more volunteers, to get additional funding. Yeah, all of that. Super important.
I had a comment about your cat, that your cat looks like one of my students' cousin's cats.
Really? Yeah, she's I don't know if she's like a calico or a tortoiseshell or like both, but she's beautiful and I love her.
She's cute. I really like your other cat. That's the one I have a closeness with, but that's
Yes.
he's
He'll come around
shyer.
too, but I don't know where he is right now. He's gray. Hopefully you'll see him.
Yeah. What was I going to ask about? Or I'm waiting for like more questions with students.
Yeah.
We talked about with like community engagement. So I'm trying to remember my exact. Let me take a sip of water.
Sure. I don't think we need to cover this right now, but I do want to talk a little bit about what community engagement can look like now when we're all trying to practice social distancing.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we can close with that. So that's been a big question that my office has been dealing with, and probably many offices have been dealing with. How do we support organizations? How do organizations support people if we're supposed to be at least 6 feet apart and generally like not in the presence of others unless you're already like social distancing with them? Pod quarantining or pod isolating or whatever they're calling it. And there, I think, are a lot of opportunities for remote work now too. Not all organizations are fully equipped to do this or have the capacity to supervise projects like that, but there are some organizations that can. That remote work can look like a lot of things, but I think right now there's a big push to get resources and programming online. So whether that's developing activities that used to be in person to some sort of like online format. So instead of a, I don't know, like paper worksheet that you fill out, it's a Google form, or instead of doing a volunteer training in person, you record yourself and post it, on YouTube or something. Finding alternatives to get that online is something that all of our partners, I think, are working to do right now. And admittedly, like, we're not really sure how long this will last or if it eases up and comes back. So, I think that a lot of organizations are trying to do some like long-term planning right now, and figure out, how to kind of turn this into something that's more permanent. So if you have skills around like website development, or, you've worked with WordPress before or something, honestly, even if you have like a Tumblr or something, that would probably be helpful. But that kind of work is just as valuable and needed too, even if it's done from your room.
What do you like most about your job? From the audience.
Yeah, no, great. So my programs generally are what we call indirect service. So we were talking earlier about days of service. That is an example of direct service. You're going somewhere, you're directly planting flowers or building a house, directly serving people. The programs I oversee are indirect. So they aren't the ones building the house, but they're the ones finding volunteers to build the house, to write the grants or otherwise get donations for the tools to build the house. So it's hard to get that kind of like, wow, I'm making an impact in the community feeling as directly as maybe some of the direct programs do. What I really love about my job is that I've been able to see the long-term impact of that indirect service that our AmeriCorps members are making. And even if I'm not directly serving broader community members, I do feel like I directly serve them. So developing the relationships and I don't know, friendships really that I'm able to develop with our Rochester Youth Year members, some of the students that I work with, is really what like keeps me going. So the fact that I'm here right now, I think is an example of that. Christine and I worked together for 2 years and, you know, still stay in touch. And it's been really rewarding for me to support her in her professional development, and to be able to continue having conversations like this about things that we're both passionate about and share similar values in.
Something that I really enjoyed about, the program that we are involved in, or I was, but because I was like in the community, like entrenched into it, I got to
Mhm.
understand like all these different resources that I never heard of before, or all of the good work that people were doing instead of listening to, no offense to the news, but it's mostly like there's a murder here, there's a shooting there, and it's like yeah, it makes places look really scary, and it makes them seem like, well, who would ever want to live here?
Mhm.
And when you get involved in a community and in a community engagement setting where you're like a long-term volunteer and you're working directly with them, you get to see that there's a lot of amazing people out there who are doing good work, who are trying to solve these big problems, and it's not scary like you'd think. Like I remember when I went to go work where I was working for my first service year,
Mhm.
people were like, oh, that's not like a good neighborhood. And I said, I don't know what you mean by that, because I was walking around, I was, helping out, and I never felt unsafe there. So,
Exactly. It's all
it's
about learning
respect.
the place that you're in. Yeah. And
Mhm.
respecting it. A place that people live, you know?
Yeah. Or I'm sure like some of my students, they're afraid of cities because they live in like very rural communities. And I
Sure.
told them once that people from cities are afraid of rural communities. And they're like, what do you mean by that? But I think it's important that wherever seems to be like an uncomfortable place, is that you try to, go out into it and see what's there, so you can see the actual reality and not just your fears of it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there are negative news reports about all communities. There
Mhm.
are like literal horror films set about all different types of communities. And I'm generally like really squeamish and have a really overactive imagination. So for a long time, scary movies were not for me, but I've learned to appreciate them as a way to showcase like what it would be if we disrupt the normal. Um, and like in looking at it through that lens, I find them really interesting. And so, you know, like all of those kind of horror stories, the things that people tell to scare you off, like at the end of the day, like that's because we love drama and it makes a good story. It's not necessarily because it's true. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Or, an isolated incident, or, the fact that it happens, it doesn't mean that it's everyone. And there's so many complicating factors. As someone wrote, there's so many people in cities. It depends.
There are a lot of
You
people
don't
in
have to
cities.
go to a major city.
Correct. There are different
Live
sizes of
one.
cities. I would say that Rochester is not as overwhelming as like New York would be.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it one thing I really love about Rochester is that it feels really like neighborhoody, if that makes sense. So you go to different pockets of the city and they feel like unique spaces. And I don't feel that like when I go to New York City, even though they have different neighborhoods. So um, I think that helps. It feels like different pockets of like much smaller towns, even though they're all kind of connected to each other.
Yeah. My director, she wrote all cities are different, which is true.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're uncomfortable going to a place that's new, maybe try to bring someone who is familiar of that place, or bring someone else that you trust, and that might be a good way for you to get comfortable. And even
Mhm.
when you volunteer in college, you're usually not going out by yourself for the first time. You have someone who comes with you to get trained. So it's not like they're just going to push you off and be like, all right, that's that.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's totally fair to like do as much as you're comfortable with and not push yourself to do too much beyond that. Maybe a little beyond that, but not too much. If you know, you go out and learn, you visit one restaurant and visit one business maybe, and that's all that you feel like you have capacity for, that's fine. It can be a slow build. Don't feel like you need to do everything all at once.
Right. The point is, like, you have to challenge yourself to grow. And I
Mhm.
think that with your department, with community engagement, that's a good way for you to challenge yourself. Um, yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Andy wrote, for sure, Christina, it's easy to be afraid of the unknown and buy into stereotypes. And so many people are afraid of poor or unknown areas, but they're often great places. You'll get
Mhm.
fast food, I'm telling
Yeah, yeah,
you. And some places
yeah.
are, you know, they seem unsavory to others, but I had many good meals there.
I can get into like a whole like political structural like diatribe about that too.
We can.
Why
We're
we fear,
nonpartisan.
I know why we fear poor communities, so I'm not going to, but I think that yeah, there's a much more complicated reason for that than
But I was going to say
feelings
that
on the outside.
with community engagement, with, you know, going into like the unknown, or, you know, college is a still a supportive environment that gets you ready for the step of independence when you leave.
Absolutely.
Like what you were saying, it's a great way to take the theory of what you're learning and put it into the community to do good things for them. And that doesn't have to be a city, it just depends on where you are. You can be
Yeah,
a rural college and still go and help their community through community.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
it just looks differently wherever you go. And it's just helpful for you to grow as a person, for you to gain professional skills, and it feels good to help others.
Yeah. That professional skills piece is exactly what I was about to say. You know, people talk about the importance of work experience on resumes, and that's totally true.
Mhm.
But depending on the project, volunteering can definitely fill that void on a resume too, and can be really helpful in applying to positions after you graduate. So if you aren't able to work in your field while you're in your undergraduate degree, or you, I don't know, miss out on like the one internship you were looking for,
Right.
volunteering and community engagement can be a good way to build those skills and have those projects to showcase too.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Do you have any final words? I can see it. Do we have any other questions to the audience? There's like a
Yeah,
20-second lag between our live and the audience. So,
yeah, yeah. I'd love to hear some questions.
is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that you didn't, that was like a dying piece of information that you needed to share?
No, I think we got to pretty much everything I had listed. You know, I guess at the end of the day, I just hope that you all consider this as something worthwhile during your college experience. And even if you, for whatever reason, aren't able to take the time to like fully and completely do this and only this during your college experience, that you maybe try like at least a day of service here or there, or at least like get to know the office.
Hmm. So many cool opportunities. There's so many amazing offices that exist on college campuses that you don't really see highlighted on tours. And it's only because there's so much that has to be shared on a tour. Um, so it's great to explore like what your campus has to offer, whether it's University of Rochester or Geneseo or Nazareth,
Mhm.
any other place. You know, see what they can do. And sometimes, like what you said about the professional experience, totally true. It's sometimes it's hard to get internships, sometimes it's hard to get hired without that experience. But if you are able to, you know, be a student and take your skills and help an organization, that's a great way for you to build your resume.
Absolutely.
We've got some thank yous, no questions yet.
I'm also happy to talk about books, movies, craft projects, Animal Crossing.
Maybe we'd have you come back for a fun Friday where you talk about, because we are doing Zoom advising at 11 a.m. today with Batavia, and then 2 p.m. with Perry. So
love it. I'm picking up my computer to see if I can find my other cat, and I'm just leaving it open in case there are any other questions. But if not, I can. Nope, I don't know where they are. They're probably with my husband.
that's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, great cat.
I'll send a picture to Christina and she can send it along to everybody.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me. It was really nice to chat with you. And I hope that what I said was helpful. I can get rambly, so sorry about that, but
you're fine.
It's recorded. You can go back and listen again. But all right.
Okay. I'm just gonna wait a few more seconds to see if there's any questions, and then we'll just end the video and we'll be good to go.
Sounds good.
Just reminders to my students, keep contacting your advisors at least once a week. Obviously, joining us for tea at 10 is excellent. We love that. But try to join us for Zoom advising or email me. You have my phone number, so you can call or text me as well. Which is special because I don't do that all the time.
Yeah.
But, we just want to make sure that you have everything that you need as a student during this time. And we hope that, you're, that you have what you need. And if you don't, then just let us know because we're going to do our best. That's what we're all trying to do. So.
Absolutely. If I know anything about Christina, she asks you for things that serve a purpose and does not ask you to do things that don't serve a purpose.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. I think we'll end it now. So thank you again.
Right, sounds good.
And I appreciate you coming and joining us this morning. So
yeah, thanks. It's good to virtually meet you all.
Yeah.
Bye.